You're back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We're taking you to Montana and we're talking fishing, but not the fishing you think. We're talking bass fishing. And the person who knows as much about it as anyone is Curtis Spindler. He's the president of Montana Bass Nation. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Glad to be here.
So, Curtis, let's be honest. Bass fishing in Montana, it's like the Rodney Dangerfield of fish. They don't get any respect because everyone's so focused on trout in Montana. But how good is bass fishing in your state?
John, that's very accurate. Most people that I talk to and tell them what I do, just say the first question is, there's bass in Montana? And I tell them, yeah, and it's really good for bass fishing. We don't have giants like in Florida or California or Texas, but, 5-pounders are pretty regular. 2 to 4 pounds is really not uncommon at all. And we don't have the crowds that they do. We've got some beautiful places to fish, mountain lakes, reservoirs, rivers, and just have incredible bass fishing here in Montana.
Well, you're already tempting me to put down the trout gear and pick up my bass rod and some crankbaits. Let's talk about some places to go, and we'll start off with largemouth bass. When it comes to largemouth, what are some of the hot spots in Montana you'd recommend?
The place that I fish the most is Knoxon Reservoir. It's on the lower Clark Fork. It's on the west side of the state. It's got both largemouth and smallmouth in it, but that's where the last state record largemouth came out of. It was about 8 3/4 pounds. It's been a few years now, but we have a few tournaments there a year. It's a beautiful reservoir, beautiful community of Trout Creek that we stay in, and you've got about 8,000 acres. Some of it's riverine, some of it's like a regular lake, but great bass fishing in it.
That sounds fantastic to me. Now, you live in western Montana. Any other bass spots that Bass Nation tends to go to for tournaments in terms of largemouth?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other lakes. Echo Lake up in Big Fork. It's not a big lake. It's got both largemouth and smallmouth, but it's always had really good quality largemouth in it. We go there. Flathead Lake actually is starting to turn on for bass fishing. We had a little club derby there a year ago, and the guy that won it had 17 pounds with only one smallmouth. A couple of years ago, the state record smallmouth came out of there. That was a temporary one. Another guy beat that, but since then, when you catch 15, 16 pounds of largemouth in a lake this far up in the Rockies and isn't even known for bass, that's pretty good.
Oh, I agree. And let's turn our attention to smallmouth. So for all of you trout anglers out there who are snubbing your nose at bass, try smallmouth bass fishing, because as far as I'm concerned, they fight and they'll jump just as much as any trout out there. We've just touched on a few: Flathead Lake, Knoxon Reservoir, Echo Lake. But let's head east of the Rocky Mountains. Fort Peck Reservoir. Is that a pretty good smallmouth bass fishery?
Yeah, you know it. Other than being a long ways to go and a little difficult to get to, it is a world-class smallmouth fishery. 5-pounders there are the norm. The guys that fish that regularly, if you don't have 20 pounds for 5 fish, you're probably not going to be in the money. It is a phenomenal smallmouth fishery. And over the last, maybe decade or so, the water, they've kept that water up. That's the first really big reservoir on the Missouri River, and they've been able to keep that up. We've had good rains, a lot of water, keep stuff in the water. The bait fish are doing well, but the smallmouth fishing there, it's incredible.
Question for you. I mean, that is such a huge body of water, Fort Peck Reservoir. Is there one particular area that bass anglers gravitate to for these smallies?
Yeah, probably, upriver, upstream of Hell Creek, up towards a place called Fourchette. Those areas, it's still huge. I mean, it's 240,000 square acres. There's more shoreline on that reservoir than there is from, I think, Mexico to Canada on the west coast. There's 1,100 miles of shoreline, I think. But, the majority of the bass fishing, you can catch them anywhere on the reservoir. But the majority of the big bass that we hear about and that people talk about are usually upstream of Hell Creek.
And when you're fishing that area, and you're targeting big bass, let's say for a tournament, what's the go-to technique in the summer? Are we talking about diving crankbaits or something else?
No, you're probably going to, you can do some topwater fishing in the morning, but after that, it's probably going to be drop shotting. If you can find some offshore rock piles and things like that. Humminbird has a great map system with Fort Peck on it. The Navionics chips and stuff, they all have, the new fish finders and stuff have great mapping of things and Google Earth and things like that. You can find some offshore rock piles in 20 feet of water, and you go out and fish like that.
Let's talk rivers. Any rivers stand out for smallmouth bass fishing?
Oh, yeah. The Flathead River, the lower Flathead River on the west side of Montana is a phenomenal fishery. A lot of that's on the Flathead Indian Reservation, and you can't have more than a 15-horse gas motor on that. So, I know guys float it below Flathead Lake. They'll float fish it down right towards the bottom end of it, off the reservation line. There's a place where, we go, we'll put our boats on it. It's not a lot of, it's only a few miles of the river, but, again, 4 and 5 pounders. I know the state record came out of there over 10 years ago. Again, it was a temporary one, but it was pushing 7 pounds, I think.
That is a very fine bass. I don't care whether you're talking smallmouth or largemouth in the Northwest. That's a good fish. All right, yeah. We're starting to run short on time, Curtis. Tell our listeners a little bit about Bass Nation in Montana, your tournament schedule, and how folks can get involved if they want to join up.
Well, the Bass Nation's been, in existence in Montana since, I think it was in the 80s, before my time even. They started it up here. Guys got involved with BASS and started fishing tournaments and fishing the trails, in order to qualify to go to the Western Regional. And, you go from the Western Regional, and if the top guy from each state gets to go on to the Bass Nation Championship, and the top 3 at that qualify to go to the Bassmaster Classic. They each win a boat, and they each get a boat to use for a year. So it's a pretty good prize if you can make it all the way up that far. We've gone to a single 3-day tournament in the summertime to qualify for our state team, which goes to that regional. We're wrapping it all up for this year already. We tried trying to get everything done earlier this year. The amount of runoff we have had this year, I'm not sure if that was a better idea. We've had tournaments. The guys that won did well in the qualifier on Noxton all had 20 pounds a day to qualify. And, from there, we've got about 100 members or so. It is a battle here to promote bass fishing versus trout fishing in Montana. But, we keep trying. We do a lot of events. We do a lot of kids stuff and conservation things. So, we'd love to have people join. So we've got a Facebook page. In fact, I think that's how you found me.
Absolutely.
Search Montana Bass on Facebook, and you can find us there and send us a message, and we'll get a hold of you.
And folks, I can tell you, Curtis is very responsive on that page. The Facebook page, again, is Montana Bass Nation. That's where you want to go. As you just heard, there's a lot of reasons to bring your bass gear to Montana. Lots of good fishing waiting for you. Take some days off the trout. Concentrate on bass. You won't regret it. Curtis, thanks for sharing this with us today on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you, John. Glad to talk to you.